Hello, everybody! This is some random Neko, waking up from my nap to greet the world for the day. And by greet, I mean finally release my rewrite of Season 1 of the live-action adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender, because my brain refused to leave it alone when everyone and their mothers could see there were better ways to adapt the story of the original cartoon. And hopefully the version I made can be one of those better ways. Anyways, that's enough procrastinating now, so let's begin. For episode 1, we open on Aang goofing around much to the disapproval of the elder monks who scold him for not training. But Aang's already a master at 13 years old, so what does he still need to train for? Monk Gyatso, wearing a medallion with an air bison carved on it, steps in to guide Aang away. This displeases the elders, and they warn that he can't shield Aang from his responsibilities forever. Aang wonders what they're talking about, but Gyatso tells him not to worry about it, distracting him with his new fruit pie recipes. Aang eagerly requests that the elders be their taste testers this time. Gyatso smiles at the idea, and the two leave as the camera pans up to the sky where a red star glows ominously. We then insert the classic introduction sequence before cutting to Katara and Sokka fishing on a boat. Or rather, Sokka tries to fish while Katara traps one in a bubble before losing her concentration, releasing the fish and splashing Sokka. He scolds her for using her magic powers and not taking fishing seriously when the village is depending on them for winter. She retorts that it's not magic but waterbending, a vital part of their culture, and is slightly chastised by his reminder. Then their boat gets caught in the rapids, and after a heart-pounding sequence, they crash onto an iceberg. Sokka is upset and blames Katara for their predicament, which sets her off. She gets so angry that she cracks the iceberg and a great beam of light is released. A series of quick cuts shows various temples and sites where statues and artifacts glow brightly in response. We end the series on Zuko, who's reading before he notices the artifacts in his room are glowing. He runs out onto the ship's deck and sees the beam of light. He shouts at Lieutenant G to steer the ship towards it. We cut back to the iceberg as the light fades to reveal Aang passed out against Appa. Katara rushes to check on him, ignoring Sokka's protests. Aang slowly comes to, and unleashes a giant sneeze that sends him flying into the air. Katara and Sokka gape as Aang introduces himself and asks where he is. Katara introduces her and Sokka and says Aang is in the South Pole. She then invites him to their village, again ignoring Sokka's protests. Aang agrees, and gives them a lift on his flying bison, Appa, who just flops into the water because he's too tired to fly. The group returns to a tiny village consisting solely of women, elderly, and young children. Katara introduces Aang and reveals he's an airbender. The villagers clearly don't believe her, so Aang does some airbending, which shocks them. He then asks where the rest of the tribe is because he thought the Southern Water Tribe was much larger. Gran explains the tribe split up decades ago for survival and their men left to fight in the war. This confuses Aang. What war? Now everyone else is confused because what does he mean, what war? Gran sends everyone away to speak with Aang, Katara, and Sokka privately. She explains that the world has been at war with the Fire Nation for almost 100 years, and no one has seen an airbender since then because the Fire Nation killed them all. Well, clearly Gran is wrong, and Aang doesn't believe what she says about the war. Katara asks for permission to show him proof, and Gran reluctantly grants it, warning to only look and not to go inside. Katara promises, and she leaves with Aang and Sokka. We cut to the trio walking up to the edge of a steep cliff. There's an old Fire Nation ship in the far distance. Aang doesn't think that means anything and wants to get closer. But how are they going to do that? He spots a group of otter penguins and grins. Cut to the trio riding the penguins down the cliff. Aang is excited. Katara hasn't had this much fun since she was young despite technically still being young. And Sokka is screaming his head off in fear. They arrive at the ship, and it's more ominous looking up close. Sokka tries to get them to leave, reminding them of Gran's promise. But Aang ignores him and goes inside. Katara goes after him. Sokka groans in exasperation and goes in too. As they explore the ship, Aang realizes they're right, and that he's been stuck in an iceberg for almost 100 years. They give him a moment to process before Sokka's ushering them out. Then Aang accidentally hits a tripwire, which activates a flare. We then jump over to Zuko practicing his firebending. Uncle Iroh gives advice on his form while trying to get him to stop and drink some tea and play Pai Sho instead. Zuko refuses. He has to be ready for the Avatar. Iroh reminds him no one's seen the Avatar in almost a century, and the light was probably just spirit activity. He doesn't want him to get his hopes up only to be disappointed. Zuko refuses to budge. After 3 years, his mission will be completed and he can finally go home. Then they see the flare. Zuko checks to see it's near a Water Tribe village and shouts for the ship to pick up the pace. Back at the village, Sokka storms in as Katara tries to get him to calm down, but he won't. Aang apologizes, but Sokka doesn't care. He has to get ready for an attack. Katara doesn't believe anyone will come, but black snow starts to fall, which sends the entire village into a panic. Moments later, Zuko's ship pulls up and he storms out, demanding the Avatar show themselves. Sokka comes out instead to fight him, but fails miserably. Zuko proclaims that if the Avatar doesn't come out now, he'll burn the village down. Aang steps forward, surprising Zuko because he's just a kid, and the villagers because they didn't know he was the Avatar. Aang says he'll only leave if the village stays unharmed. Zuko promises, so Aang goes to him. Katara tries to stop him, but he thanks her for everything and asks that she look after Appa as he's led onto the ship. We jump ahead to Katara looking out at sea when Sokka walks up to her. She insists they need to rescue Aang because he's the Avatar and can save the world, and Sokka interrupts her. He's already packed their bags for the journey. She hugs him as thanks for his support. Gran arrives to give Katara a waterbending scroll that her dad sent her as a gift for her 14th birthday. Katara is happy to have such a valuable piece of their culture, but Sokka finds it suspicious. He pulls Gran aside to ask where the scroll really came from. She admits that their dad got it from high-risk merchants who sold their location, which led to the raid that killed their mother long ago. She makes him promise not to tell Katara because she already has enough guilt over their mother's death. She doesn't need any more. Sokka frowns but promises not to say anything. He then rejoins Katara and Gran sees them off. Katara tries to encourage Appa to fly until Sokka accidentally says the magic words and he takes off, making them both excited, though Sokka pretends not to be when Katara looks at him smugly. We then cut to Aang, who's being led to a cell but uses his bending to escape onto the deck only to run into Zuko. The two fight until Katara and Sokka arrive. Aang glides up to them and Zuko shoots a fireball at him. Aang redirects the fire into a nearby cliff, which causes an avalanche that traps the ship. It's then that Iroh walks out onto the deck, yawning widely. He asks what he's missed, and Zuko shouts in frustration. The trio flee towards the Southern Air Temple for refuge, with Aang guaranteeing them a warm welcome. Katara tries to lower his expectations considering no one's seen an airbender in decades, but Aang still has hope. They arrive at the temple, which is in ruins and has no signs of life. As they roam through the grounds, Aang remains firmly in denial, and Katara and Sokka don't have the heart to say otherwise. Eventually, they discover a room filled with statues of people from all 4 nations. They wonder who they are until Aang realizes they're all avatars, his past lives. Then he stops before Avatar Roku, and remembers Monkey Atso saying he can speak with Roku when he needs help, but he doesn't know how he's supposed to do that. Suddenly they hear a noise, and Aang gets excited, going, "See? I told you there were people still living here. They were just hiding." He runs after the noise, and Katara and Sokka run after him. We cut to them entering a room filled with the skeletons of Fire Nation soldiers, which surround a single skeleton in air nomad robes. Aang sees a medallion with an air bison carving on it, and realizes the skeleton is Monkey Atso. He breaks down, and his emotional turmoil triggers the Avatar state. The violent winds threaten to send Katara and Sokka flying off the mountain. Katara calls out to Aang. She understands the grief he's feeling, and promises that they'll stay by his side and be his new family. For a beat, it seems as if her words weren't heard. Another beat, and Aang calms down. Katara and Sokka rush over to embrace him, as he accepts that he really is the last Airbender. We then cut to Aang placing Gyatso's medallion on a grave marker before going over to where the siblings are by Appa. It's then that a flying lemur pops out. He flies over and nuzzles his head against Aang's cheek. Aang's gonna keep him. Katara asks what he'll name the lemur as he flies away to eat a peach. Momo, Aang says, and Momo flies back to Aang. The episode ends with the gang flying away from the air temple as it slowly disappears in a sea of clouds. For episode 2, we open on the gang figuring out their next steps. They decide to go to the North Pole so Katara and Aang can learn waterbending. But until they get there, they'll learn from the scroll Gran gave Katara. Aang pulls out a map to chart their course only to point at random locations while listing all the strange things he wants to do, like ride down a mail chute in Omashu. The siblings deadpan, but can't really object as they don't want to push him after everything that happened at the Southern Air Temple. Aang then points out an island that must be Kyoshi Island and guides Appa to land. On the island, the gang is suddenly ambushed by warriors in green. We then cut to the gang who are blindfolded and tied up. Sokka demands to see their attackers, and their blindfolds are removed to reveal the Kyoshi warriors led by the town's leader, with townsfolk gathered behind them for the spectacle. Sokka asks where their ambushers are. Suki steps forward to say they were the ambushers. He doesn't believe her, because girls can't be warriors. Katara quickly apologizes for him before Suki can smack him. The leader demands to know why they're on Kyoshi Island. Aang says he just wanted to ride the giant koi. No one believes him. Katara urges him to airbend and he does so, breaking the ropes tying them. He also reveals he's the Avatar. The warriors and townsfolk are excited, but the leader is not. She demands they leave, because Aang's presence could break Kyoshi Island's neutrality. Suki argues in their favor as denying hospitality to the Avatar would be slander against Kyoshi herself. The leader reluctantly agrees to let them stay, but only for a few days. Meanwhile, Zuko's ship pulls into port for repairs, and they run into Commander Zhao who's curious about how the ship was damaged. Zuko and Iroh lie about what happened, and it's clear Zhao doesn't believe them. He lets the matter go though, but orders his men to interrogate the crew once Zuko and Iroh are gone. We then jump back to Kyoshi where Aang is goofing around and trying to get Katara to join, but she'd rather practice her waterbending. Sokka tries to posture to the warriors but gets his ass kicked by Suki. He goes to complain to Katara and she dumps water on him, telling him that being a girl doesn't mean being unable to fight, and maybe he can learn something from them once he stops being a jerk. She then leaves him to his thoughts. We then jump back to Zhao who's told that the Avatar is alive, an airbender, and rides a giant flying cow. Zhao smirks, and orders his men to find any sightings of a flying cow and prepare to set sail at a moment's notice. Back on Kyoshi, Sokka goes to Suki to apologize and asks her to teach him how to fight. She accepts, but only if he follows all of their traditions. He agrees. We then cut to Zuko and Iroh returning to their ship, only to realize Zhao's ship is gone just as G comes over to report a flying bison being seen near Kyoshi Island. Zuko realizes Zhao knows about the Avatar and shouts for his crew to set sail immediately. We cut back to Suki and Sokka as she guides him through a kata. When Sokka succeeds without stumbling, they take a break and end up talking about the expectations and burdens of being a warrior, though Suki seems to be doing a better job than Sokka. Suki says Sokka is doing well too, especially since he didn't have anyone to teach him like she had her mother. He appreciates her assurance. Meanwhile, Katara finds Aang goofing off again and tries to get him to start practicing, but he brushes her off because he's got plenty of time to learn. Suddenly a bell rings, and someone shouts that Fire Nation ships are approaching. Suki and Sokka run out to tell them that it's time to go. We then cut to the shores of Kyoshi as Zhao arrives with Zuko pulling in a moment later. Zuko gets mad at Zhao for going after the Avatar, but Zhao spins it as him helping Zuko out. No one buys that excuse. Zhao reminds Zuko that every second he wastes arguing is a second more for the Avatar to escape. Zuko reluctantly marches forward with Zhao. They arrive at the village where the leader and warriors confront them. Zuko demands they hand over the Avatar, but the leader says he's not here. Well, if that's true, they wouldn't mind letting them search the village just to check. The leader tells them to go ahead, but Zhao scoffs. He orders his men to burn everything down instead. Aang appears to stop them, but it's no use, as Zhao's men start burning down the village anyway. Katara and Aang use their bending to stop the fires while the warriors and Sokka fight the soldiers. But there's too many of them, so the gang must flee. Sokka thanks Suki for teaching him how to be a warrior. She smiles and kisses him on the cheek before jumping back into the fray. The gang flees, and Aang watches the smoking remnants of the village shrink in the distance. Back at the village, Zhao orders his men to pursue, but Zuko stops him. Challenging him to an Agni Kai where if Zuko wins, Zhao has to stop pursuing the Avatar. But if Zhao wins, Zuko will join his command. Zhao agrees, and they engage in an Agni Kai. Zuko wins after following Iroh's advice but refuses to burn Zhao. Zhao attacks him when he walks away and Iroh intervenes. He scolds Zhao, saying an exiled prince has more honor than a commander. Zuko asks if Iroh really meant that, and Iroh says he does. Now they better return to the ship soon if Zuko still wants to pursue the Avatar. Back with the gang, they land in a forest to take a breather and spot a teenager earthbending. The teenager flees when he sees them. They follow him to a shop in a nearby village. The teen's name is Haru, and his mom scolds him for earthbending. Katara tries to defend him, but his mom explains that if Haru gets caught, he'll be taken away by the Fire Nation, just like his father was. Katara apologizes, but his mom waves it off. She didn't know. She then invites them to stay the night, and they accept. Later, Haru and Katara take a walk together and bond over lost parents. Haru talks about wanting to fight back but being unable to, given how everyone's lost hope after all these years. Katara says that you never really lose hope. You just need a spark to reignite it. Then they find an old man in danger of being crushed to death unless Haru bends. After a beat of internal conflict, he does so to save the old man's life. The old man thanks him and runs off. Katara and Haru return to his home. That night, Fire Nation soldiers arrive with the old man who ratted Haru out. They take him away. Come morning, Haru's mom reveals what happened, and Katara is upset because she convinced him to bend to save the old man. Haru's mom isn't mad at her, as it's just what's become of their village now. But Katara wants to make things right and asks where Haru would be taken. His mom doesn't want to say, but Aang reveals he's the Avatar and can help. She tells them the location of the floating prison he'd be taken to. We then cut to the gang arriving at the prison. They easily find Haru and wonder how to free all of the prisoners. Sokka realizes the prison burns coal, which is a part of the earth, and they hatch a plan. We jump ahead to the gang storming the yard. Aang brings out coal for the prisoners to bend, and Katara tries to rally them to fight, but they don't. Even Haru hesitates now. The Fire Nation soldiers mock her, but she refuses to back down. If they won't fight, then she will. But before she can, the commander is struck by a piece of coal. Katara turns to see it was because of Haru, and just like that, the prisoners fight back, and soon triumph over the soldiers with the gang's help. As everyone sails away from the prison, Haru thanks Katara for reigniting everyone's hope in getting his father back. He just wishes he could do the same for her. Katara knows and goes to touch her necklace when she realizes it's gone. We end the episode at the prison where Zuko finds Katara's necklace. For episode 3, we open on the gang arriving at a geographical wonder called the Great Divide. Then the awe wears off and the gang prepares to fly to Omashu when a group of well-dressed travelers arrive. They greet the group, and the leader introduces themselves as the esteemed Ganjin. Then a group of hunters arrive. The Ganjin sneer at them, asking what the barbaric Zhang are doing here. The Zhang mockingly ask if the Ganjin are suffering from madness because they're willingly getting their shoes dirty. The clans clash and trade insults while the gang watches in bewilderment. Soon a guide appears and the arguing stops. Both clans try to monopolize him, but he's either guiding all or none, so they're forced into a reluctant compromise. He then orders them to get rid of all their food or else it'll attract deadly monsters. The clans protest but have no choice if they want to cross. As they chow down, the guide asks the gang to join as he could use some help in wrangling such a big group of strong personalities. Sokka and Katara look like they'd rather be doing anything else, but Aang agrees because as the Avatar, it's his job to help people and bring balance, right? And these two clans definitely need some balance. The clans overhear this and insist Aang join, so Sokka and Katara have to agree. Once everything is settled, they set off with the guide up front, the clans bickering in the middle, and the gang bringing up the rear. We see quick cuts of the group crossing the divide until they're almost at the end when they're suddenly attacked by a canyon crawler. Aang and the guide chase the monster off, and the clans accuse each other of sneaking food only for it to be revealed that they're both sneaking food. Aang is upset that the clans put everyone's lives at risk, but his scolding is interrupted by the appearance of more canyon crawlers. The clans are then forced to work together if they all want to make it out alive. They eventually escape the divide. The clans argue again, and reveal they're each descended from the clans which Oma and Shu were a part of. They argue about a sacred seal, accusing each other's ancestors of breaking and stealing it, pulling out their halves of the seal as proof that their story is the truth. Aang interrupts, revealing he knew their ancestors as he was alive 100 years ago. He talks about how the sacred seal was actually part of a game their ancestors, who were actually friends, played in secret, but their families found out and forced them apart, never to see each other ever again. So the friends split the piece in half to keep as a reminder of their friendship, and hope that one day they can make the piece whole and be friends again. The clans are dumbstruck by the tale, but easily believe it. They apologize to each other for their hostility, and vow to become friends like their ancestors. They reunite the pieces and a complete seal is formed. They give it to Aang as thanks for his help, and as a token he can use if he ever needs anything in Omashu. The two clans walk off, now mingling peacefully together. Katara and Sokka are impressed, and think it was serendipitous that Aang knew the clan's ancestors. But Aang reveals he actually made everything up, which shocks them. Katara calls Aang a genius while Sokka calls him mad, because how the heck did he even come up with something like that? Aang smiles wistfully, talking about a mad genius friend who taught him how to think outside the box. A friend who is actually from Omashu, though he probably isn't alive anymore. Katara comforts him, saying they can find out what happened to his friend, maybe even meet his family, which cheers Aang up. They then leave for Omashu. We cut to the gang arriving at the grand city of Omashu as Aang tells them about how friendly the people are just as they see a guard knock someone's cart off of the bridge. But despite their concerns, the gang gets into the city without a problem. Once inside, the siblings look around in awe, while Aang looks up at the mail delivery system. We flash back to Aang hanging out with a kid named Bumi who's upset at his poor attempt at making a bison whistle. Aang assures him it's fine, and tries to cheer him up by asking if there's anything he wants to do. Bumi looks up at the mail tubes. Aang asks what he wants to do with the mail. Bumi grins, telling him to open his mind to different possibilities because he doesn't just see a mail tube, but... We cut to the boys zooming down a tube in a cart. "The world's greatest sight," Bumi shouts. Aang laughs, saying Bumi is a mad genius. Bumi does a snorting laugh in response. We jump back to the present where the gang stands in front of a mail tube. The siblings don't know if sliding down a mail tube is the greatest or safest idea, but Aang convinces them to hop on anyway, and off they go on an epic slide ride. Eventually, the ride ends with some property damage that leads to them being arrested. But Aang uses a seal and the guards are ordered to take them to the king instead. The gang is brought before a crazy king who's trying to figure out their punishment. Aang reveals he's the Avatar, which prompts the king to throw a feast instead. The gang enjoys the feast, and the king asks why Aang vanished. Aang explains he was trapped in ice until now, and found a once peaceful world at war and that everything he'd ever known was gone. The king looks at him with a bitter but understanding expression. The feast ends, but Katara and Sokka suddenly have crystals growing across their skin. Aang demands to know what's going on. The king says he wants to play a game, and assures that he will free his friends if Aang passes one of 3 challenges. He can either tame a pit of rabid monsters, escape a booby-trapped maze, or duel with anyone of his choosing. Aang thinks it over before challenging the king to a duel. The king asks if he's sure. He is. The king grins, saying he chose wrong before removing his robes and revealing a muscular body. He earthbends them to an arena on the floor below. Aang and the king fight while crystals encase Katara and Sokka. The king uses a bunch of dirty moves that make Aang mad, but the king retorts that the Fire Nation won't take it easy on him just because he's a kid. Eventually, Aang manages to catch the king off guard and defeat him. He demands the king free his friends, and the king says he will if Aang can guess his name. Aang is upset because that's unfair, but the king shrugs. Life isn't fair, but if you open your mind to the possibilities, you can even turn lemons into orange juice. Aang wonders if the king is really just crazy until the king does a snorting laugh, and it all clicks. He tears up and quietly asks, "Boomy?" The king smiles. "It's good to see you, Aang," and opens his arms for a hug that Aang happily accepts because he didn't think his friend would still be alive. He apologizes for disappearing and leaving Boomy alone all this time, but Boomy assures him it's fine. He's just glad Aang's alive, because if he'd stayed, he very well could have died on that terrible day. It's then that Sokka and Katara remind them of the crystals and Boomy breaks them free, saying they were never in real danger because the crystals were rock candy, making Aang smile and say he's a mad genius. We jump ahead a bit to see the gang getting ready to move on. Boomy gives Aang a new and improved bison whistle, which he happily accepts. But before they leave, Aang has one more thing he wants to do. We then end the episode on Aang and Boomy riding down a mail tube together. For episode 4, we open on Katara and Aang practicing with the scroll. Katara struggles to make a water whip, while Aang has no trouble at all. He tries to give her advice, but she rudely cuts him off. Aang wilts, wondering what he did wrong. Katara apologizes and tries to resume practice. It's then that Sokka comes over, saying they've run out of food. They check the map and see there's a town nearby, but the best way to get there is on foot, so they'll have to leave Appa and Momo behind. We cut to the gang arriving in town, and they're immediately on guard because it's a Fire Nation colony. They're ready to run when townsfolk spot them, but are surprised by the warm welcome they get. Aang is happy to see nice Fire Nation folk, though Katara and Sokka are suspicious. A jovial old man explains that the town was established decades ago, and has found a way to peacefully live with Earth Kingdom locals. And it doesn't hurt that soldiers leave him alone because of the respect they have for the Great Aunt Wu. The Great Aunt who? Sokka asks. The old man grins and we cut to the gang outside a nice building that he gestures as the home of the Great Aunt Wu, a fortune teller who is never wrong. Katara and Aang are eager to meet her, though Sokka is very skeptical. An attendant comes out and gestures for the gang to come in, as Aunt Wu was expecting them. The gang meet Aunt Wu, and Sokka immediately voices his skepticism, but Aunt Wu is unbothered, and asks Katara to come in first. Katara is eager to learn about her love life. Aunt Wu predicts she'll have an epic romance and marry a strong man, but won't reach her happy ending until she faces the darkness within. Sokka goes next, and Aunt Wu predicts he'll face much struggle and anguish, but it'll all be self-inflicted. She advises him not to get in the way of his own happiness. Then Aang comes in. and Aunt Wu predicts he'll face a great conflict where he must make a choice that could lead to a great sacrifice in order to save the world. But Aang doesn't care about that and asks about his love life. Aunt Wu quickly makes something up, saying he'll be with the one he loves as long as he trusts his heart. We then cut to the gang outside, ruminating over their predictions when they see the townsfolk gathering. Aunt Wu comes out and gives a series of predictions for the month, ending with the townsfolk remaining safe from a great disaster. The gang then leave to go back to Appa and Momo when they hear calls of distress. They follow it and find animals trapped in cages. They free them only for the commotion to draw Fire Nation soldiers over. They're about to fight when unknown assailants jump in and take the soldiers out. When the fight's over, the gang sees their helpers are teenagers and kids. The leader introduces himself as Jet, and his crew as the freedom fighters who protect the valley from Fire Nation scum. Katara is instantly smitten with him. One of the fighters finds the soldiers' camp only a few paces away, and they go raid it for supplies, with their biggest haul being barrels of blasting jelly. Jet then invites the gang to their hideout and they agree to go, though Sokka isn't getting a good vibe from him. They arrive at the hideout, which is up in the trees, and Jet carries Katara up much to Sokka and Aang's irritation. As they walk through the hideout, Jet and Katara bond over losing family to the Fire Nation. At the end of the tour, Sokka insists they leave, but Jet asks for his help on a mission before they go, using flattery to convince him to agree. On the mission, Sokka gets to show off his skills. Then they lie in wait as someone approaches, ambushing them once they're close enough. Sokka sees that it's just the old man from Aunt Wu's village, and calls everyone off. But Jet gets physical and accuses the old man of being a Fire Nation spy. Sokka stops him because the old man is just a civilian. Jet is angry at his interference but reluctantly lets the old man go. They return to the hideout where Sokka reveals what happened and insists they leave. But Katara doesn't believe him. Aang agrees with her because it's Katara. She goes to meet with Jet but Sokka tries to stop her. He doesn't want her anywhere near him cause he's bad news. Katara accuses him of being jealous of Jet and storms off. She finds Jet and asks for his side of the story. He reveals the old man actually had a poisoned knife and Sokka just didn't see it. Katara is relieved to hear that and asks he speak with her brother about it. He will, but first, he asks her about her waterbending, complimenting her skills. She brushes him off, saying she's really not that good. But Jet insists she is, and advises she think of her bending as an extension of herself just like he does with his swords. She follows his advice and finally makes a water whip. She jumps in excitement and hugs him. Aang sees this whole exchange, and frowns in jealousy because Jet's advice was the same advice he tried to give Katara earlier. He quickly leaves before they see him. Katara and Jet return to the others, and Jet pulls Sokka away to speak in private. But it's soon revealed he wanted to get rid of Sokka because he had planned to destroy the Fire Nation colony and knew Sokka would get in the way. He orders his fighters to take care of Sokka and leaves. We cut to Katara and Aang as Jet returns, saying Sokka apologized and went on an important mission as part of that apology. Katara easily believes him, though Aang is a little suspicious now due to his jealousy. Jet then asks for their help to complete an important mission, filling a dam with water to help fight future fires. Katara and Aang agree to help, and Jet leaves them to go check on things at the dam. While bending, Aang tries to get her attention, but she scolds him for playing around during an important task. Then she gets mad when he's dismissive about the skill needed to complete said task. Just because he's the Avatar, it doesn't mean he knows everything about bending. Aang wilts, and Katara apologizes for her rudeness. The two finish the task in awkward silence, but Jet isn't back yet, so they go find him only to find blasting jelly placed by the dam. They're confused, and demand an explanation when Jet finds them. He explains that he's going to rid the valley of Fire Nation once and for all. They look out to see Aunt Wu's village and realize he's going to destroy it and kill everyone there. Katara and Aang are horrified. She asks where her brother really is, and Jet simply says he took care of him. She gets angry and attacks him. She and Aang fight against Jet, and she uses a water whip to end the battle. But it's too late. The dam blows up, flooding the valley. Aang tries to stop the water in an epic display of power, but it ends up being too much and he has to let go or drown. They watch in horror as the village is destroyed. Katara lashes out at Jet and freezes him to a tree. Then Sokka appears, revealing he managed to escape and evacuate the town. Jet's pissed, accusing him of letting evil live. But Katara retorts that Jet became the very evil he claimed to fight when he stopped protecting the innocent and decided their lives were a price worth paying. She turns her back on him and walks away. The gang go to Aunt Wu, who thanks them for their help, though Aang doesn't think he deserves it because he wasn't able to save the village. But Aunt Wu assures him that he bought enough time for them to escape, which makes him feel better. Sokka then claims her prediction was wrong, but she reminds him that she said the townsfolk would be safe, not the village. Sokka scowls while Katara and Aang laugh at him. We then cut to the gang flying away. Katara apologizes to Sokka for not believing him and to Aang for being so rude because she was jealous of his ability. Sokka tells her not to fall so easily for the next pretty boy she meets and they'll be square. She punches him in the arm. Aang assures her it's fine, because he already had a basis for bending while she had to learn everything on her own, and is already more skillful than him, which makes her happy. He then gives her a necklace he got in town. It can't replace her mom's, but he thought she might appreciate it anyway. He then goes to guide Appa. A beat. Then Sokka suddenly muses that even though Aang couldn't stop the water, he was still a pretty strong guy. Katara looks down at the necklace, then over at Aang, and the episode ends. For episode 5, we open on the gang coming across a forest that was burned down right through the middle, making it look like a scar on the land. They take in the devastation that was definitely done by the Fire Nation. Aang doesn't understand why anyone would do something like this. Katara comforts him, handing over some acorns Momo found, and saying they're a sign that the forest will grow again, which cheers him up a little. Then they're approached by a villager who spotted Appa and went to investigate. The villager is relieved to learn Aang is the Avatar and begs for his help. We cut to the gang entering a rundown village as the villager explains that every night since the forest was burned down, the Heibai spirit attacks them and steals people away, never to be seen or heard from again. He begs Aang to help appease Heibai, since the Avatar is supposed to be the bridge between worlds. Aang promises to help even though he doesn't know the first thing on how to be a spirit bridge. Night falls and Heibai appears. Aang fails to calm it down. Katara and Sokka run out to help but get snatched by the spirit. Aang chases after them but fails to save them, and ends up in the spirit world by accident. He wonders how the heck he's gonna save his friends, and notices something approaching him from a distance. That something turns out to be a dragon. He panics, trying to fly away, but finds he can't bend in the spirit world. He cowers before the dragon, but it doesn't attack. It communicates that he's Roku's spirit guide, which excites Aang because he really needs some guidance. The dragon tells Aang to go to Roku's temple on Crescent Island on the winter solstice for answers. Aang panics again, because the winter solstice is tomorrow and he doesn't know how to get out of the spirit world. The dragon huffs, and gestures for Aang to get on his back. He does so, and the dragon brings him back to his body where Appa and Momo were guarding it. Aang glances back at the forest, and vows to return as soon as he can before flying away on Appa. Meanwhile, Katara and Sokka are trying to find a way out of the spirit world, which leads to a lot of tension that culminates into an argument that devolves into hurtful insults. With emotions running high, Sokka ends up revealing the truth about the waterbending scroll, saying if Katara hadn't begged to learn waterbending, their dad wouldn't have gone to find the scroll which sent the Fire Nation to their door. That the culture she wanted to keep alive was what got their mom killed. This shocks Katara into silence, and Sokka knows he's crossed a field of lines. He tries to apologize, but she doesn't want to hear it. She wants to be left alone. He can't do that because of where they are. He does give her some space, though he's still close enough to hear her quietly crying. We then cut to Aang, who's flying as fast as he can without thinking about stealth, so he's easily spotted by Zuko and Zhao. Both order their men to direct their ships after Aang, though Zuko does so in an explosive manner that irritates his crew. Iroh runs damage control, but it's clear the crew is discontent with Zuko in command. We cut to Aang arriving at Roku's temple and greeting the fire sages. They attack him and he's forced to flee. He runs into another sage, Shiyu, who helps him escape through a secret passage and guides him to the sanctuary. Aang asks why the other sages attacked. Aren't they supposed to help the Avatar? Shiyu explains how the Fire Nation's spirituality changed due to the Fire Lord's propaganda, and the sages' loss of hope when the Avatar never returned, which makes Aang feel guilty. We then jump back to Katara and Sokka sitting in tense silence. A beat, and Katara breaks it by asking why no one told her the truth about the raid. Sokka explains that Gran and Dad wanted to protect her. She was already traumatized and full of guilt because of Mom's sacrifice. They didn't want to add that on top of it all. Katara argues she had the right to know even if it hurt. Sokka doesn't disagree. He apologizes for using that truth to hurt her, and for being a sexist jerk to her for so long. Katara accepts his apology, and apologizes to him for insulting his skills and accusing him of trying to be like Dad. She believes he's already a great warrior. He just needs to stop getting in his own way. The two hug, and their bond is much stronger than before. We cut back to Aang and Shiyu, who arrive outside the sanctuary where Zuko is waiting for them. Aang fights him while Shiyu opens the doors. Aang darts inside just as the other sages and Zhao arrive. The doors close behind him and refuse to budge. It seems Roku doesn't want them in there. Zhao confronts Zuko, smirking as he says he violated the terms of his exile, so he's under arrest. He orders his men to restrain Zuko. Inside the sanctuary, Aang wonders what to do. Then the solstice occurs and a bright light flashes. When the light fades, Roku stands before him with a smile and asks what took him so long. Aang greets him and asks for help because he doesn't know what he's doing. Roku assures them that part of an Avatar's journey is figuring out what their path will be. He then informs Aang of Sozin's comet and its arrival in a few years. With it, the Fire Nation will have the power to destroy the world, so Aang must master the other elements and stop them before then. Aang doesn't know if he can, but Roku assures him he will, as he's done it many times already. Aang asks how to save his friends. Roku says he already knows how. That's not an answer, Aang protests. Roku tells him to return to the forest and all will be clear, but first, he'll help Aang leave the temple. Outside the sanctuary, the doors open, revealing Roku, who's possessed Aang's body. The sages bow in terrified awe. Then Roku uses bending to destroy the temple, forcing everyone to flee and allowing Zuko and Shiyu to escape. We then jump to the shores of Crescent Island where Shiyu and Aang say farewell. Aang asks Shiyu to come with him, but Shiyu assures Aang he'll be okay, and urges him to leave before it's too late. We then cut to Aang returning to the forest and landing in an area where he sees a panda statue. He looks at it for a beat and something clicks. We jump ahead to night, and Aang's back in the village when Heibai appears. The spirit stalks up to him, but Aang stands firm. He knows Heibai is the spirit of the forest, and is angry at its destruction, but he promises that the forest will grow back, and presents some acorns to Heibai. Heibai sniffs the acorns, and for a beat, everyone thinks it'll attack. But then the monstrous form shrinks into a giant panda. Heibai bows to Aang before walking away. Bamboo shoots spring forth behind it, and out comes all of the people who are spirited away. The townsfolk joyfully reunite, and Aang is happy to see Katara and Sokka are alright. He asks how their trip to the spirit world was. The siblings smile at each other, and say it was an enlightening experience. We jump ahead to the gang on Appa as Aang tells the siblings what Roku told him. We then end the episode with Katara and Sokka promising to help Aang save the world. For episode 6, we open on Katara and Aang practicing water bending, which Aang tries to take more seriously due to the comet's deadline. But it's clear the responsibility of saving the world is getting to him. We then cut to the gang entering a town to restock, only to quickly find out that they have no money. Sokka goes to look for work, and meets a fisherman who needs help, and will pay a good rate for it. Sokka accepts. The fisherman then notes that Aang looks like an air nomad, and Aang boasts that he's an airbender and the Avatar. The fisherman isn't impressed, berating Aang for being the reason as to why the war is still going on, because he ran away from his responsibilities like a coward. Aang flinches, and Katara guides him away, but now without some choice words for the fisherman. She tells Aang not to listen to him because he's just a bitter old man, but Aang remains shaken by the accusation. Suddenly, a scruffy man stops them, and asks if Aang is really the Avatar. Aang says he is, though his tone is more lackluster now. The man gets excited. He's got someone Aang has to meet. They're suspicious, but decide to go with the man anyway. As they walk, the man introduces himself as Che, and the guy he's taking them to is Zhang Zhang the deserter. Where did he desert from? The Fire Nation army. That immediately puts them on guard. Che takes no offense, and says he's also a deserter too. But how do they know this isn't a trap? Che starts making exaggerated movements and noises like he's trying to either firebend or pass gas. Neither happens, and he uses that as proof that he's not a firebender, just an ordinary guy who was forced to join the army. This calms them down a bit, but they're still weary. Katara asks what's so special about Zhang Zhang deserting. Because he was the first to get away with his life. Che followed his example, and joined him because he was said to have been enlightened by the spirits. This makes Aang happy, because Zhang Zhang can teach him firebending, but Katara warns him not to get his hopes up. We cut to the trio arriving at a camp, and Che directs them to Zhang Zhang, who's mad he brought in outsiders. But Che introduces Aang as the Avatar as if that'll help, which it doesn't. Zhang Zhang tells Aang to leave, but he refuses. He wants Zhang Zhang to teach him firebending. Zhang Zhang says he won't and goes into his tent. Aang goes after him, prompting him to lecture Aang about the nature of fire, how it was alive, and that made it all the more dangerous. He saw that Aang had no discipline and has yet to self-reflect on the cowardly actions that led him here to the present day. Aang flinches at the accusation. Zhang Zhang demands he leave and never come back. We then cut to Katara and Aang by the coast as Katara tries to comfort him, but Aang agrees with Zhang Zhang and the fisherman. He's a coward who ran away. She asks what he means. He tells her how he ended up in the iceberg, which we see through a series of flashbacks. He'd been told he was the Avatar, and would be separated from Monkey Yatso and sent away to train. He was just a kid. He didn't want to deal with such a heavy burden, and because of that, he let the world fall apart for almost 100 years. Katara assures him the war wasn't his fault. What the monks did wasn't right, and he wasn't just a kid, but still is one. And how does he know if his presence would have changed anything? Like Boomy said, he could have been killed as well, and the world might be worse off than it is now. Aang feels a bit better, but it's still not enough. They decide to go back to town and see if Sokka is back yet, unaware of the storm brewing in the distance. We then cut to Zuko forcing his crew to get to Aang's last location ASAP, but they'll have to go through a storm if they want to. Iroh tries to reason with Zuko, but he orders his men to sail through the storm. Back with the gang, Katara and Aang find out Sokka isn't back yet. The fisherman's wife is worried they're in trouble because the storm is fast approaching. Katara and Aang quickly set out on Appa to go find them. Back with Zuko, the crew fights to keep the ship sailing. Lightning strikes, and a crewman falls and dangles from the mast. Zuko saves him, and Iroh orders the men to sail towards the eye of the storm. We then jump over to Sokka and the fisherman wrestling with the ship's sails when Katara and Aang appear. They get the two onto Appa and fly off, but the storm is in full swing around them. A large wave engulfs them, but unlike last time where Aang let go of Appa's reins, he holds on tight and briefly enters the Avatar state to save everyone. bringing them up out of the water and into the eye of the storm just as Zuko's ship arrives as well. Aang and Zuko make eye contact, but Zuko lets him go. Meanwhile, Zhang gets a vision from Roku and agrees to teach Aang. We jump to the port where the fisherman reunites with his wife, and she forces him to apologize to Aang and pay Sokka. Sokka asks what the others were up to while he was gone, when Zhang suddenly appears. He tells Aang he'll teach him. We then cut to Zhang running Aang through exercises, but Aang grows impatient. He wants to do firebending now. Zhang won't let him, and emphasizes the importance of the cycle, and how each element teaches something to make it easier to learn the next. So until he learns earthbending, he won't bend fire. He leaves Aang to do more exercises. Aang decides to make a fire anyway just as Katara comes to check on him. He gets overexcited and loses control, accidentally burning her. She runs away while Aang goes after her to apologize. They run into Sokka and Zhang. Sokka is upset that Katara got hurt, while Zhang is unsurprised. This is what happens when a firebender has no discipline. Aang is more than sufficiently chastised. Katara sticks her hands in some water and is surprised to find her burns healing. Zhang tells her that healing is a talent and speaks volumes of her potential. Then Zhao arrives at the camp and greets Zhang, his old teacher. He reveals he's been promoted to Admiral and demands the Avatar surrender now. Aang does so when Zhao threatens to burn down the entire camp and everyone in it. He's led away by a group of archers. We then cut to Zuko arriving at the port town and learning through local gossip that Zhao locked the Avatar up in Po Huai Fortress. Iroh tries to dissuade Zuko from breaking in, but Zuko is determined and prepares for a prison break. Night falls, and we see Zhao give a rousing speech to Fire Nation soldiers while someone wearing a blue spirit mask sneaks in. He breaks Aang out of his cell and they make their escape, but get caught right as they reach the gates. The blue spirit threatens Aang's life, and Zhao has to let them go as he needs the Avatar alive. But at least one of the archers manages to nail the blue spirit on the head, knocking him out. We then cut to Zuko's ship where his crew complains about him, saying he's a spoiled prince who doesn't know hardship or suffering. Ji says he will never be their prince, just as Iroh appears. The crew tries to backtrack, but Iroh waves them off. He starts listing off names, confusing them until certain names get a reaction from different crew members. He asks if they recognize the names. They do. They were members of the 41st, who also happen to be family or friends of Zuko's crew. But how does Iroh know them? Iroh says that every night, Zuko recites those names to honor them. The crew scoffs in disbelief, because what does Zuko have to do with the 41st? More than they know, Iroh says, as he tells the tale of how Zuko got his scar. He dared to speak against the plan that would sacrifice the 41st for a piece of land with no strategic value. He thought he would fight the general who proposed the plan, but as it was the Fire Lord's war room, it was Ozai Zuko had to face in an Agni Kai. As any good son would, he refused and begged for mercy. He was burned instead, and Iroh could only look away. When Zuko was healed enough, he was sent 2 scrolls, one with his mission, and the other with a report of the 41st demise. The crew is shaken. They didn't know about any of that. They only knew that their loved ones were sacrificed, before they were forced to join the prince in exile. Now they see their anger was misplaced, because Zuko fought to save the 41st, and was burned for it. We then cut to Zuko unmasked as a blue spirit. He wakes up as Aang talks about how much has changed in the past century, and how he used to have friends in the Fire Nation. When he sees Zuko is awake, he asks if they could have been friends if things were different. Zuko is silent for a beat. Then he shoots fire at Aang. Aang dodges and runs away with a sad and disappointed expression. Zuko returns to his ship, battered and bruised, and is surprised to see the entire crew gathered on deck. The surprise turns into bewilderment when the crew lines up and welcomes back their prince. As he walks down the path they've created, they salute him. At the end of the line is Iroh, who's smiling proudly. Zuko asks what's going on. Iroh tells him not to worry about it and guides him to his room to rest. We jump over to Aang as he reunites with Katara and Sokka, who've been looking for him. Katara asks how he escaped. Aang says he had a little help and leaves it at that. He asks about Zhang Zhang, and they tell him he left, not even saying where he'd go, so unfortunately, Aang lost his chance for a firebending teacher. But that's fine with him. He never wants to bend fire again, because nothing good comes from it. Katara and Sokka exchange concerned looks as the episode comes to an end. For episode 7, we open on the gang stopping for a break when they spot signs of a battle involving the Southern Water Tribe. The signs lead them to a Water Tribe boat, and the siblings wonder if it's their dad's. But it's actually Bato's, their dad's best friend, and the three joyfully reunite. The siblings ask where their dad is, and Bato says he moved on, but he's expected to hear back with a location any day now. He invites them to join and see their father. The siblings happily agree and invite Aang to join too. This surprises him, because he didn't think he'd be invited, and asks why. Katara is confused because it's obvious why. They're family now. Aang smiles. Yeah, they are. Then they ask where Bato's been staying and he gestures for them to follow. Aang is introduced, and as they get closer to their destination, Bato tells Aang that he'll be familiar with where they're going. As they wonder what he means, we exit the forest and see a mountainous area with a monastery and town situated at the base. Aang recognizes the area as it's right under the Northern Air Temple, and sees someone flying through the air. He gets excited, thinking it's an airbender. Bato tries to stop him, but he zooms off towards the flyer only to find it's just a kid in a gliding wheelchair. Aang is disappointed, but stays in good spirits when he and the kid have a gliding competition. The two land in the courtyard of the monastery just as Katara, Sokka, and Bato walk in. Bato apologizes to Aang for getting his hopes up, but Aang is fine. As sad as he is that there were no airbenders, he's glad something from his culture survived. The boy in the wheelchair comes over and introduces himself as Teo. He excitedly asks Aang about airbending as he never thought he'd ever meet an airbender. Before Aang can answer, a nearby building explodes. The gang worries about an attack, but Teo says that was just caused by his dad's experiments, and invites them to meet his dad. They agree, and Bato also comes along. We cut to them arriving at the source of the explosion as a man with burnt eyebrows comes out. Teo introduces everyone to Sai, his dad and a mechanist who's invented many things to help everyone live a better quality of life in town, and was the one who modified the gliders. Sai invites them into his workshop, and Sokka is fascinated by everything he sees. He starts to geek out over mechanisms with Sai, and the two get lost in their own little world. Katara is surprised by her brother's passion, while Bato looks at Sokka thoughtfully. We then cut to the courtyard where Aang hangs out with Teo. Teo tells Aang about his fascination with air nomad culture, and how he wishes he could see the Northern Air Temple. Aang offers to take Teo up there on Appa, and Teo enthusiastically agrees. We cut to Zuko and Iroh, who receive a report from G, when they're suddenly boarded by a bounty hunter and her Shirshu. Zuko demands she stay her business, but she shushes him. Then the Shirshu lunges forward, destroying cargo to reveal a cowering man. The man tries to flee, but the Shirshu paralyzes him. The hunter takes the man away while Zuko yells for her to come back, but she ignores him. We jump back to Aang and Teo as they arrive at the Northern Air Temple. Teo is in awe of everything as they explore. They eventually find a room that can only be opened with airbending. Aang opens it and they're horrified to find the room filled with weapons and Fire Nation flags. They explore the room, wondering how all of this was in here because some of it looked brand new. Then they find a door and open it to reveal an elevator. They exchange wary looks before deciding to see where it would lead them. We cut back to Zuko and Iroh as they enter a saloon to find the woman from before gambling with a bunch of bounty hunters. Zuko demands she pay for the damage she caused, but the woman refuses, saying money's a little tight as she scoops handfuls of it into her bag. Iroh tries to guide Zuko away, but he refuses to go, instead demanding she track someone down for him and he'll call it even. The woman thinks it over for a beat and agrees only because Iroh is cute. She introduces herself as June and asks who's the target. Zuko pulls out Katara's necklace. We cut back to Sokka and Sai, who are examining a hot air balloon model that Sai can't seem to get right. Sokka does some brainstorming and finds the solution that makes it work. The two celebrate. Bato and Katara enter, asking what they're cheering for. Sai boasts about Sokka helping him invent the first hot air balloon. Katara congratulates him, but he's looking at Bato as if asking for approval. Bato guides him away so they can talk privately. He says he can only imagine how hard it's been on Sokka these past 3 years, especially since the men left before he was old enough to go ice dodging. But he assures Sokka that he's doing fine, that being a good leader doesn't mean being a strong warrior, that a leader must use their head more than their fists. Sokka perks up at the pep talk and asks Bato if his dad would be proud of him. Before Bato can answer, a grinding noise is heard from the other side of the room. Sai pales and tries to get everyone to leave. They wonder why, only for the question to be answered when a door opens to reveal horrified Teo and Aang. Teo demands to know why his dad's workshop was connected to a room filled with Fire Nation weapons. Sai makes stumbling excuses until Bato demands he tell the truth. Sai confesses he was working for the Fire Nation, but only so he could protect Teo and the town. He assures them that he only gave harmless objects, but Sokka says that anything can be a weapon in the right hands, before leaving in disgust. The others leave as well. Katara and Aang comfort Sokka and Teo, but they can only wonder why Sai will work for the enemy. Bato offers some insight, saying there's nothing a parent wouldn't do to protect their child, even if it meant selling their soul to the devil so their child would live to see another day. We cut back to the workshop where a Fire Nation commander arrives. He's here to pick up the new blueprints, but Sai refuses, saying he was done. The commander reminds him of the consequences for defying the Fire Nation, and threatens Teo. Sai gets confrontational, and the commotion draws the others back to the workshop. They see the commander and help chase him away. The commander tells Sai he's going to regret breaking the deal, and will be back to destroy the town. Everyone panics. What are they gonna do? Then Sokka takes charge, and says they're gonna make sure the Fire Nation will never come back. We enter a montage sequence of the town preparing for the attack, while Zuko, Iroh, and June track down Katara. The montage ends and the town is as ready as it can be. Meanwhile, Zuko, Iroh, and June cross paths with a Fire Nation army unit. Zuko asks what's going on, and the commander reports of a traitor who's being aided by Water Tribe savages and an Airbender. Zuko demands to join them and the commander accepts. June's end of the deal is now done, and she leaves, but not before winking at Iroh. We jump ahead to the unit and Zuko arriving at the town. They attack and the town fights back using various mechanisms to beat back the Fire Nation troops. Zuko rushes in to find Aang, and the two duke it out. Sokka and Sai bring out the completed hot air balloon, and make a ditch around town that's impossible to cross without aid, though the hot air balloon is sacrificed in the endeavor. Aang blasts Zuko to the other side of the ditch where Iroh catches him. The Fire Nation retreats. Everyone celebrates, and Katara manages to get her necklace back as Aang took it back from Zuko. Bato then pulls the gang aside, and brings out a pot of ink. Sokka's eyes widen, because is that what he thinks it is? Bato smiles. While it wasn't ice dodging, the gang had more than proven themselves in the battle. For that, he gives Aang the mark of the trusted, Katara the mark of the brave, and Sokka the mark of the wise. He tells Sokka that yes, his dad will be proud of him. Then a messenger bird arrives with a map to the rendezvous point, and Bato invites them to join, but the gang declines. They have to go to the North Pole. He wishes them well and hopes to see them again soon. We then end the episode with the Fire Nation finding the remains of the hot air balloon. For episode 8, we open on the gang looking for any signs of civilization, but all they see is ocean and ice, and ocean and ice. They wonder how they're gonna find the Northern Water Tribe, only for the Northern Water Tribe to find them. We cut to the gang being escorted through a majestic city of snow and ice. Everyone's in awe, but Katara and Sokka are also a little bitter, because the North had all this wealth, while the South was in shambles. Sokka is then distracted when a white-haired teenage girl sails by. The two make eye contact. He waves and gives her a dopey grin. She giggles and looks away. Katara sees this and smirks. She nudges him knowingly. He scowls and pushes her away. We then cut to the gang being greeted by Arnuk, the chief of the Northern Water Tribe. Aang introduces everyone and requests that he and his friend be taught waterbending. Arnuk calls forth Pakku, their best waterbending master. Pakku tells them to return here at dawn tomorrow for their first lesson. Then Arnuk invites them for a feast. We cut to the feast where Arnuk announces the Avatar's return, and how Princess Yue, his 16-year-old daughter, was finally eligible for marriage. Everyone cheers. Sokka sees the girl from earlier is Yue, and sighs in disappointment because what chance does he have with a princess, only for him to choke when Yue decides to sit next to him. He tries to chat with and impress her, only to stumble and embarrass himself. Yue is clearly endeared though, and would love to do an activity with him sometime. She then leaves, and the camera pans over a bit and we see that Katara was sitting next to Sokka the entire time, watching the whole thing in amusement. She teases him. He ignores her and starts eating with a disgruntled expression. We cut to morning where Katara and Aang meet Pakku, who is surprised to see her, and explains in a condescending tone that women learn to heal, not fight. Katara protests, but Pakku threatens to not teach Aang if she keeps pushing. She reluctantly backs off and goes to the healing huts where Yagoda is about to start the lesson. We jump ahead to the end of the lesson and see Yagoda compliment Katara's natural talent. She then sees her necklace and asks where Katara got it, telling her the necklace looks just like the one that belonged to her friend, Kana. Katara realizes her grand-gran is Yagoda's friend, and is surprised to learn she was from the north. Yagoda explains Kana was about to marry, but left before it happened. Many wondered why she left, but Yagoda knew, as Kana was a passionate person who refused to be tied down by tradition. She gives Katara a knowing look before leaving her to her thoughts. Meanwhile, Sokka hangs out with Yue, who's enjoying the feeling of being a normal teenager with him. She even shows off some waterbending tricks, and makes Sokka a little sculpture of Momo, though warns him to keep it cold or it'll melt. Well, if it does, he'll just have to hang out with her again to get another one. This makes Yue sad, because as much as she would like to, her father is arranging her engagement, and she won't be allowed to be alone with another man once the necklace is on her. Sokka thinks that's ridiculous, and why is her dad the one picking who she's gonna marry? Yue shrugs helplessly. That's just how things work in the north, and as princess, she must think of her people first. She thanks Sokka for the activity and leaves. He watches her go sadly. We then cut to Zuko and Iroh as Zhao boards their ship. He's been given permission to commandeer as many ships as he wants for an assault on the Northern Water Tribe. Zuko objects, but the official order from the Fire Lord shuts him up. Zhao then invites them and their crew for tea at port. Iroh agrees, but Zuko says he'll stay and storms off. Later that evening, a sound draws Zuko out of his room, and he goes out to find multiple explosives set all over the ship. His eyes widen and he turns to make a run for it when we cut to the port as the ship explodes. Iroh and the crew rush out to see the destruction. The men are devastated. Iroh falls to his knees. Ji can only put a steadying hand on Iroh's shoulder as he also sheds tears at the sight. We then cut to Katara and Aang returning to the gang's room. While she's glad to learn some waterbending, she's mad it's not the waterbending she wants to learn. Then a downtrodden Sokka returns, holding a little sculpture of Momo that Aang finds impressive, as he compares it to the real Momo. Katara starts ranting about Pakku and the North's sexist traditions. Sokka agrees with her and suggests Aang teach her what he learned, so they technically won't be breaking the North's dumb traditions. Katara and Aang are absolutely on board with that idea. We then cut to Zhao, who's giving Iroh his condolences for Zuko's passing, and lip service about finding the perpetrators. Iroh solemnly accepts them, and offers to join as an advisor, to which Zhao happily accepts. Iroh asks how he's going to take down the Northern Water Tribe, and Zhao assures him he has a plan before dismissing him. Iroh leaves, and meets with Ji and a soldier who's revealed to be Zuko in an empty corridor. They exchange information before parting ways. We cut to Aang teaching Katara waterbending, but they're found by Pakku, and brought before Arnuk to demand an apology from Katara. But Pakku's condescending attitude sets her off, and she challenges him to a fight. Sokka and Aang stand by her. Katara goads Pakku into a fight. The two duke it out, and Katara's prowess amazes their growing audience. However, the duel ends in Pakku's victory, though Katara still refuses to give up. Then Pakku sees her necklace and realizes it's the one he carved for Kana. He couldn't understand why she left because he loved her very much. But her grand didn't love him, Katara realizes, because it was an arranged marriage. And she left because she refused to let the North's outdated traditions rule her life. It must have taken a lot of courage for her to leave. This makes Yue flinch. Pakku releases her and gives the necklace back. Katara asks if he's still not going to teach her, even knowing what he knows. Of course he won't. Tradition is tradition for a reason. Sokka scoffs, saying their tradition is why the South is what it is today. Everyone's confused by what he means. He asks if they know that Katara is the last waterbender of the Southern Water Tribe. This shocks everyone, and their reaction angers him. He berates them for their isolation. While they've been sitting up here all pretty with their traditions, the South has been raided again and again until there's almost nothing left. That their tradition is destroying the Southern Water Tribe by refusing to teach Katara waterbending. Arnuk apologizes, because they had no idea the South was in such dire straits. Sokka's anger calms. He can't fault them since it's not like the Poles were next door neighbors. But the North still should have done more to stay in touch with their sister tribe. Arnuk gives Pakku a look, and Pakku nods. He bows an apology to Katara, and offers to be her teacher. Katara happily accepts. We jump ahead a few days and see Katara is wiping the floor with everyone in Pakku's class, including Aang. We then cut to Sokka and Yue hanging out. She says she spoke with her father after the duel, and he agreed to hold off on an engagement, which makes Sokka happy. He asks for another ice sculpture, and she grins, making one of Appa. But the moment is ruined when black snow falls, and Sokka pales at the sight. We cut to the tribe gathered in the courtyard where Katara and Sokka reveal the black snow was made by ash from Fire Nation ships. Aang goes out to scout, and is shocked to find hundreds of ships heading their way. The North prepares for battle. We jump ahead to the Fire Nation arriving, and they immediately attack. The North counters, but there's too many of them. We cut to nightfall, and the Fire Nation falls back. Iroh asks how Zhao will take care of the North when they have the moon on their side. Zhao assures he has a solution for that. Iroh meets with Zuko again, who's going to break into the North to get the Avatar. Iroh tries to dissuade him, but Zuko won't be dissuaded and leaves. We jump back to the gang as they regroup to figure out a plan. Aang decides to get spirit help, and Yue takes them to the spirit oasis. They see a pair of koi fish and wonder what they're doing here. Yue says they represent the moon and ocean spirits. Aang decides to ask those spirits for help and meditates. It's then Zuko arrives in the oasis and tries to kidnap him. But with the combined efforts of Katara, Sokka, and Yue, they defeat and restrain him. We then cut to Aang in the spirit world where he meets Roku. He asks how to find the ocean and moon spirits, and Roku directs him to Ko the Face Stealer, warning him not to show any emotion or else his face will be stolen. Aang meets with Ko and figures out where the spirits are, but not before he shows emotion, which sends Ko after him. He's saved by Monk Gyatso, and the two share an emotional reunion. Aang apologizes for running away, but Gyatso assures him that there's nothing to apologize for. He then sends Aang back with the promise that they'll see each other again someday. Aang returns, and is shocked to see a tied-up Zuko glaring at them all. What should they do with him? The elders ask. As much of a threat as Zuko is, there's no honor in killing a restrained enemy, so they'll turn him over to the north. Aang then reveals that the koi fish are actually spirits, just as Zhao and Iroh arrive in the oasis. Zhao reveals his plan to kill the moon, and receive the honor and glory that's rightfully his. Everyone says he's crazy, even Iroh and Zuko, because everyone needs the moon. But Zhao won't back down, and bags the moon spirit, turning the moon and sky blood red. Yue suddenly collapses, and Sokka catches her. Iroh threatens a miserable existence for Zhao if he doesn't free the moon. Zhao lets it go, only to immediately blast it with fire, killing it. The moon vanishes, and it's as if all color has vanished with it. Yue and Katara suddenly feel cold. Outside, the battle takes a turn as waterbending disappears. Zhao realizes he messed up and flees. Zuko breaks free and chases after him. Everyone wonders what to do now, because all hope is lost. But Aang sees the ocean spirit and says it's not. He merges with the spirit to form a giant monster of water, which stomps out to sea and destroys the entire fleet with a wave of its arms. Outside, Zuko catches up to Zhao and they fight. Zuko knocks Zhao over a bridge just as the monster approaches. He gives Zhao a hand, but Zhao lets himself be taken by the monster instead. Back at the oasis, Iroh realizes Yue was blessed by the moon, meaning she's the only one who can save it. Yue realizes that too and goes to the pond. Sokka stops her, asking what she's doing. The moon saved her when she was a baby by giving its life. Now she will save it by giving it back. Sokka protests, but Yue reminds him that her duty comes before her heart. She kisses him goodbye and returns the blessing. The moon spirit glows, and Yue fades away. She then reappears as a spirit, and promises to always watch over Sokka before disappearing. The moon shines brightly again. The ocean monster sees it and returns to the oasis. Its form dissolves, turning back into a fish and leaving Aang passed out with the others. The next day, the North mourns and rebuilds. Pakku tells Katara he'll be going south with others to help rebuild, and also hopes to reconnect with Kana. Katara wishes him good luck, and asks who's going to teach Aang. Pakku says Aang better get used to calling her Master Katara. The two bow respectfully to each other. We then cut to Sokka at the oasis with Arnuk. Arnuk tells him about the dream he got when the moon saved Yue, that he saw his daughter as the moon. He's so proud of her, but also so very sad. We then cut to the gang looking out at the ocean and taking in the aftermath of the siege. Aang declares he'll stop the Fire Lord so this doesn't happen again. We then cut to Zuko and Iroh sailing away on a small boat. Iroh tries to assure Zuko that his men would have known how to survive. Zuko doesn't say anything. Iroh asks what he's going to do now. Zuko doesn't know. He's just very tired now. Iroh pulls him in for a hug, and he trembles in his uncle's arms. We then cut to the Fire Lord's throne room, where we see Azula kneeling before the throne. Ozai declares he has a task for her, and Azula looks up with a smirk. She won't disappoint. We then do a sliding transition to Azula now standing before Omashu, and zoom out to reveal a Fire Nation army behind her as the season comes to an end. Or something like that. Obviously this isn't a perfect rewrite, and there are plenty of ways it could be improved. But I hope I made this alternative Season 1 enjoyable for you all. Anyways, reminder that this is just my take on how Season 1 of the live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender could have gone. So whether you liked it or not, I don't mind either way, and would love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment which show you'd like me to try to rework into a better version of itself next. This is some random Neko, going off to take a quick breather before possibly doing this all over again for Season 2. Don't forget to keep calm and just meow.